All right, so I'm gonna minimize this and I'm just gonna open up, let's go to my desktop here. I'm gonna open up my final project, right? So, and again, just to kind of remind you, like I like to maybe reiterate things a few times. Hopefully it sticks, right? We have all of our base files here. We know they're base files because they have an X in front of them, okay? These are our drawing files. This is where we draw all of our project geometry. I have my title block, which is really a block. We created those maybe 2 classes ago. And then I have my final project file, which is the master file. And this file, I will have XREF'd all of these base files, right, into this one final master file, essentially. So when I open up that final project file, okay, XR, enter, I can see that I have all of my items XREF'd here, okay? And, ooh, things are zoomed out a little. I think because I actually created something that was correct, right? And in my other files, I just kind of drew junk, right? Just to illustrate something. But in this file, I actually drew something. The floor plan file, I actually drew something. So I'm having a little bit of some weirdness here. So let's just fix that. This is something good to look at. I know that my floor plan is likely correct in what I want to maintain, so I'm going to detach a few of these XREFs and reattach them. I'm going to right click on my elevation file and detach it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to detach it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to detach that one. So what I just did there is I broke the association between this master file that I'm in and the drawing file, right, that I've drawn the actual geometry in. So if I do a zoom extents, the only thing that I have in this file now is my floor plan, okay? If I want to get those back, I didn't delete the files, I just detached them. So if I want to get them back, I'm going to click attach drawing again, choose, you know, whatever file I want to associate, and click, and it's tiny, of course, next to that, and it's back. So interior elevation, attached drawing, and we'll do our site plan, open, okay. Click and place my site plan. And my last one is going to be my exterior elevation. I think that what might happen with this one is what happened with my floor plan, though, when I actually draw it correctly. You know, I might have a little weirdness, but that's okay. Now, if you didn't want to detach those, it makes you a little nervous doing that, right? You could always just move the XREFs, right? So if this was actually kind of, you know, way up here in outer space, and you think, oh, I just want to bring it down here, you're more than, you can definitely do that. I could grab it, M for move, click, and I could move it down, zoom out, click, and place it, right? So we could do that as well. If an XREF isn't showing up, you can always right click on it and choose reload, right? We can always do that. So XREFs are really flexible, right? It's a good system. You can attach them, you can detach them, you can reload them, right? There's a lot of good things you can do with XREFs. All right, so here is my floor plan XREF, right? And I'm going to close out that final project. You know, we just looked at this. Actually, before I do close out of it, I just want to remind you, your master file is where you're going to compile all of your XREFs, right? But you're also going to print from your master file. You're really only going to set up paper space and print from this one file. You're not going to do it with all the other base files, okay? So don't worry about setting all of your files to print in your individual files. All right, so let's close that out. I'm going to save that. And let's open up my, let's see, we're going to draw the exterior elevation file. So I'm going to click, open that one up. And there's my exterior elevation, which is garbage, of course, right? Okay, so I'm going to, I need to draw this elevation, but, you know, I have to have something to help guide me, essentially, because, you know, other than kind of maybe flipping back and forth between this and this, right, which is kind of tough to do, I don't have anything else to reference where all of these kind of elements are falling within my elevation, right? So, oops, let me look at, oh, come on, where's my zoom? Alt, no, okay, anyway. we'll zoom in here. So I look at my elevation and I do see that I have some vertical markers here, right? I do have how tall, you know, from, I guess, the edge of this ridge line or the eave here to the ground is, and how tall maybe this floor structure is, and how tall the roof is, right? I can see how tall that roof is, how tall this roof plane is. I can see how tall the chimney is. But what I'm not getting here is where all of these elements exactly are on the elevation, right? And I guess that sort of makes sense because I'm going to use my floor plan to help guide me when I'm drawing this elevation, okay? All right, so two things I want to talk about with elevations. Number one, I'm going to use my floor plan to help guide drawing this elevation. All right, so let me show you how to do that. And then the second thing I want to talk about is the pen weights we're going to use for this elevation, okay? So I talked about the pen weights in the video. If you watched the video, hopefully, I talked about pen weights in that video, but I'll go through it again. And what I want to say about pen weights and elevations is that with elevations, we assign pen weights according to where elements fall within a field of vision, okay? So what does that mean, right? It means that, oh, my markers. Did Naima run off with them? I guess so. We'll do it on the screen here. Okay, so the idea, let me just say this. The idea behind an elevation, and I'm just going to open up my floor plan here. Let's see, floor plan. Is that an elevation is a vertical view of a building or whatever, right? So when I am looking at an elevation of this little cabin, right, it's as if I were a little person standing out in front of the cabin, right, on the ground, looking at it in front of me, right? So everything that I saw on the exterior, and actually it'd be up here, right, be looking this way. Everything that I saw on the exterior as I was standing right here looking at the building is what I would draw. So I see, you know, a blank wall here. I see 1, 2, 3 windows. I see a door, and I see 1, 2, 3 windows here, right? So that's what I see there. And actually, which elevation are we drawing? We're drawing the east, right? So this one right here. Okay. So we're drawing the east elevation here. This is our east elevation. So when I look at the project here, I'm seeing this window here, right? This window, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 windows, 1, 2, 3, 4 windows. One's bigger than the rest. There it is right there. I have a little piece of wall right here, which I see here. And then we have our trellis back here, which I didn't draw when I drew the floor plan. So that's on the main level. And then up above that, right, which we're not drawing the second floor plan, but if we were to look at the second floor plan, we'd see a blank expansive wall. We have a window, right? 1, 2, 3 windows, and then a couple more windows over here, okay? So you see all of those elements happening right here, okay? All right, so that's what an elevation is. It's as if you were standing in front of the building looking at it from the outside, all right? So the idea behind line weights with an elevation is that you are drawing an elevation and you're picking line weights now, not according to architectural elements, but according to where an item lays in your field of vision, okay? And let me tell you why. So when we're working in floor plan, essentially a floor plate, right, is, it's as if you're looking at a space and you've cut the top of the building off and you're looking at it from the top with the top cut off at a 3-foot level, right? So what that essentially does is that it says, hey, at the cut line, everything is 1 pen weight. You know, in between the cut line and the floor, everything there is one pen weight. And on the floor, everything is 1 pen weight, right? So if you think about it, when you cut the top off of a building and you're looking at a floor plan, you're looking at, you know, if I cut this building, you'd see windows, wall, window, window, wall, window, right? And what's nice about a floor plan is that all of the things that we cut are basically in the same plane, all right? And what I'm essentially kind of getting at here is that when we're using layers in floor plan views, we assign layers according to architectural elements, right? So all the windows are on a layer, all the doors are on a layer, all of the walls are on a layer, right? And the reason that works is because when we cut a floor plan, all those items are on the same plane, right? So they can all read the same pen weight and look correct, if that makes sense, okay? But if you look at an elevation, if I were standing right here, let me draw a little circle that will just be a human being, right? And I'm looking, here's my field of vision, okay? So I'm looking at this floor plan just like this, okay? These windows right here are very close to me, but this window right here is further away, all right? So if we're thinking in terms of field of vision, these two items are the same element, meaning they're both windows, right? And if we were looking at a floor plan view, we would assign both of these the same line weight. But because this window is closer to me, it's going to get a heavier pen weight than this window that is further away from me. It'll get a lighter pen weight, okay? That's how line weights work in elevations. Things that are closer to you get a heavy pen weight. Things that are further away from you in the elevation view get a lighter pen weight, all right? So I usually like to assign heavy, medium, light, thin, fine. We have 5 pen weights that we associate with layers. 5, 6, maybe 7, right, if you want a couple more. But generally, things that, if I'm standing right here, things that are closest to me get a heavier pen weight regardless of architectural element, and things that are further away from me get a lighter pen weight, okay? That's how your elevation is going to work. So what that means is, let me go to my exterior elevation file here, okay? I'm going to go to create some layers here. Let's open up my layer properties here. And because I'm going to draw a an elevation instead of a floor plan, I'm going to create some elevation layers now. And because our elevation layers are assigned graphically instead of by architectural element, they're going to be very generic with regard to their name. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to give this layer the name A-Elev-01. Okay, and I'm going to create a few layers with this type of naming. So I'm going to come back here, and this will be A-Elev-02. Actually, you know, I changed my mind on how I want to name them. I'm gonna give them heavy, HVY, and then we're gonna have a medium. Okay, and we're gonna have A-Elev-thin and A-Elev-light. Heavy, medium, thin, light, fine. A-Elev-fine. And we'll have, let's do A-Elev-wide, actually. I forgot one. Right before heavy will be wide, so that's even thicker than heavy. And then we're going to have A-Elev-hatch, H-T-C-H. Or we could do pat. Let's do pat. P-A-T-T-1, pattern 1. And then we'll have A-Elev-pat2. Okay? So what this allows me to do is to have heavy lines, medium lines, thin lines, and then line weights for patterns. All right, so hatches, essentially. So if I were to look at this elevation view again, right, I think usually the heaviest pen weight in an elevation will be the ground line. So you'll draw the topography, right? And that will be a wide line. So you can see that's a very wide line. And then you're going to see that we have kind of, this one's a little bit incorrect. So we're going to draw ours a little bit differently. But essentially the things that are closest to you here, right? So from here to there, and up here, all of this stuff likely, and the roof plane here, these would all probably be heavy and medium pen weights. And then this little nook back here that forms the patio, things back there on that plane would be fine. So you'd have heavy ground line, medium and, or sorry, wide ground line, heavy and medium items that are closest to you, and then fine items would be furthest away, okay? So what you're going to see now as I layer, right, on my elevation view, instead of assigning things, again, according to architectural element, it will be according to where they fall in my field of vision, right? Heavy, medium, thin, fine, and then we'll have patterns, of course, okay? So that means that this window could be on the medium A-L of dash medium, right? And this window back here could be A-L of dash fine, right? Even though they're the same architectural element, when I draw them in elevation view, they need to visually look different so we can sense a field of vision happening there, right? A sense of depth. And so we're going to give them, even though they're the same, we're giving them different pen weights. That somewhat makes sense to everybody, hopefully. And let me just say this. There's a right and wrong answer in that things closer to you need to be heavier than things further away, right? But there's no rule as far as, you know, you could say, well, I want the things closest to me to be medium and the things furthest away to be fine, right? This is sort of like layering and assigning colors in floor plan view, right? I don't care what colors necessarily you assign as long as there's steps between them that differentiate them, right? So heavy might be yellow and thin might be magenta, right? There's a good distance between them and I can read them separately, so that makes sense and that's okay with me, okay? All right. So I've created the layers somewhere. I've created the layers that now I'm going to use for my elevations, and these same rules apply to interior elevations, okay? You're going to notice that I also made these lowercase, and I made them lowercase so that I can visually see that they're different from the other layers I generated, right? Of course they're named differently, but I like a lot of visual cues to make things easy for me to find, okay? All right, so the next thing we have to do is we need to draw our elevation, all right? And the way that we're gonna draw our elevation, we need something to help us reference items on our elevation. We have vertical heights that will help us draw vertically, but we don't have any sort of horizontal heights, right? Or distances to help us draw this. So the way that I'm going to go about creating this elevation, and this is what was done in the video, is I'm going to use XREFs to help me, okay? So within my exterior elevation file, I'm going to type XR enter and open up my external reference tool palette here. And I'm going to use XREFs to attach a floor plan file to my elevation file, which totally, you're probably thinking throws the entire system off, right? Because a floor plan is a base file, and the base file goes into the final file, and that's where we print, right? But the nice thing about XREFs is, number one, I can XREF the same drawing into multiple places to use it, right? But number two, what's nice about them is they're somewhat temporary in a file, meaning I can XREF a file and attach it to a drawing, use it for a purpose, and then detach it and it goes away, right? So I can use my floor plan to help me draw my elevation and then detach it when I'm done, and it goes away, essentially, okay? So I'm going to click on my attached drawing. I'm going to click on my floor plan, hit open, okay. Zoom extents. Oh, it didn't attach. Oh, what did I do? Something. Attach drawing, floor plan, open, okay, click. I didn't click. And there's my my floor plan, okay. All right, so I need to draw this elevation over here. So the way that I'm going to go about this is I'm going to use my XREF for reference, okay? And I'm going to rotate the XREF so that the elevation I'm drawing is kind of on, it's facing down, essentially, okay? Now, if I had to draw all four of these elevations, I would copy this XREF. I would copy 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I would rotate this thing so that on each of these individual views, I would have a different elevation that I was elevating. So this one could be the south elevation, right? Southeast. Let's rotate this one. Oh. Rotate. Okay, and then we have the other side, which should be pretty close to the one we're going to elevate. All right, so if I were required to draw all four, I would XREF in my floor plan, copy it over a few times, and rotate it to be able to elevate whatever side I wanted to elevate. Okay, I'm not doing that here, but I just wanted to bring that up. All right, so I have my floor plan XREF'd in here, time to draw the elevation. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my X-line tool, okay, and I'm going to draw a line down here. All right. And again, I've forgotten to do something, which I always do. I'm going to create another layer called my work layer. All right, again, I kind of always do this. I make it a weird color so that it stands out from the other colors. And I use that to generate my construction geometry. Where is my work layer? There it is. Kind of fuchsia. Okay, and I actually want that to be my current layer, so there we go. Okay. All right. So what this line represents, and I've just sort of given it a good distance from the floor plan that I'm going to elevate, right? And the reason is because I'm going to use this to help me kind of place things along this floor plate for this elevation. But I'm going to draw the elevation down below this floor plan, all right? So I'm just going to move this down a tiny bit. I want this to be far enough away from the floor plan so that when I start creating these heights, right, the elevation doesn't run into my floor plan. But if it does, I guess we can deal with it when we get there, okay? All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where all of these elements on the floor plan are. All right, and I'm going to use my floor plan as a template. Now this first line that I drew, this is somewhat going to act like my ground plane right here. Okay. I'm going to come up here to X line, and I'm just going to start marking elements on my floor plan, and I'm going to do that by clicking on them. So let me zoom in here. The first thing I see here is this column, the window behind. We have some trim, or is that a column? No, we have some trim, or no, that is a column back there. We have another column here, the window, window, window. Okay, so I'm going to initiate my X line, and I'm going to click here, click, escape. And what I've just done there is I've essentially drawn the intersection of where the ground plane, right, the ground plane hits that column. Does that sort of make sense, right? Okay, XL, X line, enter, click, oop, and I'm going to place my vertical line again. So now I can see where that column is right there. It's right here essentially. Okay, it's going to be a little bit hard to see for a minute, probably for the next 15 minutes. You're going to
make it go up, like the line go up.
I used an X line.
Oh, I know. The X line is going this way.
I'm having the same problem.
Oh, so let me do XL, enter. So if I click once, and if I guess mine is just picking the element. If you can't get it to work, before you click to place your line, you can come down here and choose vertical or horizontal and force it. But I'm going to say usually it will just sense what orientation it needs to be. See right here, when I move my mouse around, it kind of, without anything around it, it kind of just jumps, but here it sort of sensed it. Okay, so I'm going to start marking kind of some important elements on this facade. Instead of using X line now, I'm just going to copy this. CO, copy, click, and I'm going to hit every important marker. And for now, I think those important markers, click, click, are just the columns. Click, 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 right? So now you're starting to see where this column falls, where this falls, where that falls, right? Where all of these columns fall. Click, click, and click, click. Okay, and I haven't drawn the trellis. There'd be a trellis out here, right? Which I don't have. Okay, so now I've drawn the columns, and I've actually missed a pair back here. So XL, enter, a pair of lines. And I think M for move, I'm just gonna move that little guy over. There we go. Okay, so now I've marked where all the columns are, right? They're all vertical. Okay, they run all along that facade. And I've also marked where the ground line is, okay? So now what I probably need to do, and you'll go back and forth, right? And whatever you do, there's no right or wrong answer as to how you proceed. But the way that I usually go about creating elevations is I'll create some of these elements like this using the floor plan as a guide, right? And then I'll come back and I'll use the plan over here to help me place some of these vertical elements, all right? So I know that this is my ground plane. This is my ground plane. I know that I have a line right here, right? And I know that line is, let's see, well, if that step's 6 inches and that's going to match, it's 12 inches, so that's 12 inches above the ground line. Offset, 12 inches, enter, click, click. Okay. And I have another 12-inch line that goes right there. So between these two rises, okay, I have 2 feet, and now at the 2-foot mark, I'm where all of these columns sort of meet that ground plane. Okay. So I'm going to offset this again. Offset, enter, 12 inches, enter, click, click. Okay. One important thing I actually forgot here was the stairs. XL, enter. I should have drawn my little stairs right there too, right? There's the markers for the stairs. Okay, you guys see that? All right, so now I can draw my stairs, right? And I can draw this line that sort of tells me where the columns are going to live, right? In elevation, I guess I should say. So let's see. We've got a stair that comes and, oh, it's 6 inches tall, so offset, enter, 6 inches, enter. So from the ground, we've got from the ground to here, that first step, F for fillet. What do I have going on here? Well, let's trim. Something, I wonder if these are, oh shoot, I hope these are coplanar. Anyway, I'm going to trim. TR, enter, enter.
What was the last distance you offsetted? Was it 6 inches?
6 inches, yep, and I got that from right here.
Oh, okay.
TR, enter, enter. There we go. And there's my first step, okay? And then I have another step that comes up, trim, trim, 2 steps. And then I have another step, right, that comes up. Oh, that needs to be 6 inches. Offset, 6 inches. Trim, click, click. Oops. There we go. So I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then a step up. 1, 2, 3, and then a step up. So TR, enter, enter, right? And essentially now, all of these lines right here are kind of garbage because they were just sort of telling me where the stair was. And so I'm going to delete those. TR, enter, enter. Trim off that. And I'm just really going to start making my drawing look like this image on the screen, right? That's really what I'm going to be doing here. All right, so now I'm going to TR, enter, enter. I have some weirdness going on with my drawing. Hold on 1 second. I don't think you guys should have this. Gosh, that's oh, thanks. It's odd. It's wanting to trim the entire line and getting a lot of weird, does not intersect with the cutting edge. It certainly does, right? Getting a lot of weirdness. I'm gonna have to work around here for a second. Jeez, that's weird. So my AutoCAD is acting up a tiny bit, so I'm just kind of trying to do what I can to make it work, right? Ooh, that was weird too. Trim, and it extended. Oh boy. That's odd. does not intersect with the cutting edge. Okay, I have some, what I think might be happening is, for whatever reason, I don't think my drawing is laying flat. And I say that because everything looks like it's working, but it's kind of not. So I'm going to do the best I can today, but we'll still work through it. Okay. All right, so I've got my lines coming up here, and really you see where this column right here, it sort of terminates at where I have my 2 foot mark, which is this line, right? So I don't really need this line any, what did I just do? I didn't really need this line anymore. I don't really need all of this line anymore. There we go. And F for fillet. Oop, there. Gosh. That's odd. I'm going to reboot here real quick. Let me close out of everything and let me reboot. Okay, let me restart AutoCAD. All of those things, the filleting, the trimming that I was doing should have worked, right? And what is weird is it almost looked like it was kind of graphic in nature, the way it was sort of doing it, but not really. Oh, not that one. Okay. No, elevation. Okay, let's see if that works now. There we go. I mean, so far so good, right? Although it's still kind of acting funny. That was all one piece. It should have trimmed all the way. Anyway, so you can see we've got the column coming down, the column coming down, right? And it sits on this line here, and there's a line kind of down the center. So I don't need this line anymore. I just need this line. I'm going to extend that over, EX, enter, enter. I'm going to extend EX, enter, enter. What in the world is going on? Here we go. Sorry guys, doesn't usually have this many issues. Okay, so looks good, looks good. Now when I look at this, I have all of these columns that come down and sort of stop at this floor plane, right? So trim, enter, enter, and I can start cutting off probably all these columns. Ooh. Right? Because they all sort of end at this ground plane. I'm going the long route because, again, things are just not working. So I'm just trimming, 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 right? And let's look at this line over here. This is the edge of the house, and it goes, trims off right there. There we go. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm just kind of, you know, getting this to look the way it should. Now I need to, the next thing I need to do, I've got the columns established, and I think the next thing I'm going to do is really kind of place this next horizontal line. So 8'4" from the top of this point right here is where that eave comes down. So I'm going to take this line right here, offset, 8'4", enter, click, click. Okay, and now 8'4" between these two distances. Okay. All right, so I'm probably going to have to copy a few of these columns up to the second level because they do occur there, but for now I'm going to trim off all those columns. So essentially what I've drawn here is my first level elevation. Okay, Now I need to sort of start looking at my floor plan, right, and my elevation at the same time and figuring out what is exactly in these spaces, right? So if I look right here, I have a window, right? And some of these little areas, like the window frame is going to be 2 inches all the way around, right? And this says, I'm just guessing a little bit, this says there's an 8'4" difference. So I'm assuming that these windows are about 8 foot tall maybe, right? And we have maybe 4 inches above them, okay? If you printed these out, you can measure them with your ruler, right? Just to make sure that that's correct, okay? But I'm really just gonna start drawing things the way that I see them. So this is a window right here. I'm going to start drawing it. And again, you wanna make sure that you draw it exactly as the image shows. I'm gonna guess a little bit on dimensions. This looks like the mullion here is at about, it's 2'10", so that looks pretty good. So let me just start drawing a few things here. Okay. So offset 2'10". My window is right here. Okay. And offset, enter, 2 inches, enter, or actually 3 inches probably. And what I'm doing now is, you see I'm drawing this window here. So we have this little, maybe it's a piece of wood, maybe these are 2 windows, right? But I'm just drawing it the way that I see it. Okay, offset, enter, 2 inches, enter, click, click. Okay, so that's that frame right there. And then I have a frame that goes all the way around the inside, right? And it's getting a little messy. It's hard to kind of tell what's going on, right? But what I'm doing here is I'm constructing this, and I'm going to go back after I've drawn a little bit, and I'm going to trim some things out and make it look the way it should, right? So this is really a railing right here. This right here, these pieces are these pieces right here. And I have the mullion, kind of the frame going all the way around it. Offset, enter, 3 inches, enter. That's what I maybe assume this little piece at the bottom here is. Trim. Right, there we go. Just gonna keep moving along. So starting to look a little bit more like a window, right? And offset, enter, 4 inches, enter, because we know that the space between the bottom of the deck here and the top of the edge of the eave was 8'4", but we have a little piece of wood, like a trim piece right there. So I'm going to trim that little guy off, and then I don't need that line, so I'm going to delete that. So it starts to look like that, and then I'm going to offset that again. Offset, enter, 3 inches, or sorry, offset 2 inches. And I've got that mullion piece now. So let's see. Oh, I think what I need to do now is my frame is extended up a little bit too far. So I'm going to use extend and extend that line out and trim these pieces out a little bit, right? I'm just, again, looking here, making sure what this looks like. So extend, enter, enter, goes out, trim, tr, enter, enter. There you go. Right. And now we've got that frame, we've got that frame. Oh, I forgot a little frame down here. Offset, enter, 2 inches, enter, click, click. Right, looks pretty good. So it's really starting to look like a window, right? And I get rid of all the extra lines just so that things somewhat make sense to me, right? And if you're looking at this thinking, gosh, there's too many pink lines, well, if you wanted to, you could start coming in here and assigning layers to different items, right? So I'm going to give a heavy line weight to my columns, okay? Oh, and I think I actually, I created all those new layers, didn't I? But I forgot to assign colors to them. So let's give heavy, let's do this, and we will, oop, not blue, sorry. Red, and then medium, there's heavy, medium, and then light. So I'm stepping 2 colors between each of these to give them a good visual difference. Heavy, medium, light, and then we have thin. So I did green last, heavy. I don't remember what color I did last. Cyan. So we'll do magenta. And then fine will be gray. And then we've got our patterns will be something down here. Okay. All right. So now you can, let's see here, we've got my 2 columns. Those are on the heavy layer, right? And MA match properties. I can actually make all of my columns red. Not horribly different from the pink, the work layer, right? So maybe what I want to do is change my work layer from this weird dark pink to purple again. There we go. Okay, so I did heavy for the columns, maybe like a medium or a thin for the window frame. So I'll change that to thin. MA, enter, match properties, right? I'm going to come in and match those lines. So I've drawn a window. Oh, I don't have a dashed line. L for line. I'm just going to draw, right? And there's my little open operable window. And I need to create a layer for that too. I'm not going to do that right this second, but there's my window, right? So somewhat looks like that. Yep.
Question. So it looks like on the elevation on the paper, there's a tiny line just right within that bordering that window. Would that be something we would need to draw as well?
On the inside, oh, looks like we've got a tiny little gasket. Let's see. Let's draw that. I'm gonna cheat a tiny bit as I draw that. I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to offset that rectangle, maybe like a 1/2 inch. What would that be? It's kind of an odd little, maybe just a little frame, I guess. MA, enter, just match that. And then my little, there we go. There you go. And now I've done heavy, I've added heavy lines for the columns, right? I've done, what was this one? I don't remember now. Thin for the inner lines, right? And if I wanted to even add another layer of kind of visual quality, meaning visual difference between line weights, I could have even changed one of these layers to maybe like a thin pattern line or something, right? But the idea is that heavy elements read heavy, medium, thin, fine, right? They all read the way they should. So I've created a window here. And now, you know, this window back here is identical to this one. And this window is identical and that window is identical, right? So I'm going to grab all of these lines here that I just created for that window. I'm going to copy them, right? And I'm going to copy them into this space right here. CO, enter. Oops, CO, enter. Grab my top endpoint here, click. Click, and look how nicely all of those lines copied over, right? Now, this window is very much in front of this window graphically, right? So this window should read heavier than this window back here. So I'm actually going to change all of these line weights to a thinner line weight. Oh, come on. I'm going to make them all, let's see, thin, fine. I'm going to make those all fine. Okay. And you could use hatch to generate this pattern, or I could do a line. And I could offset it. Let's look at that. It doesn't really tell you the distance, but you can measure it with a ruler. 6 inch. Okay, that's what I was going to say, 4 or 6 inch probably, right? But I could offset these, or you could use hatch. And MA, match properties, I'm going to make that kind of a very thin line weight. right? So really it's, I mean, it sounds simple when I say it, but it's not really simple. But what you're really just doing is drawing what you see there, right? And so I look here, right? I use the floor plan to place it, and then I look over here and I say, okay, well, it looks like we have a piece of framing here maybe, or a frame here, or an operable window panel line there, right? We have siding here, and those are just offset lines. Somebody forgot to change their layer for that little guy, right? Let's draw a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to draw the rest of these windows over here, and I really only have to draw one because I can grab this, CO, copy, click, and I can copy it to there, and I can copy it to there, right? And now I really only have this one in the center, so copy. I'm going to copy it one more time. And you're thinking, well, it's not the same size, which is true, right? But the nice thing about this, the way this elevation is drawn, is that all of the other elements are identical except this window is wider, right? So what I could do here is delete that. I could use the stretch command, S for stretch, and I could stretch this all the way over to there, and I didn't have to redraw a thing, right? Okay, so now I've got these lines over here. I could use a hatch, or I could do line work. I don't want to re-offset all those. That's a lot of work, so I'm just going to grab them and CO, copy. And again, you're like, wait a minute, they don't reach all the way over. So what do? We extend them. How wonderful that is, right? Okay, any questions so far? You can slow the YouTube down, don't worry. So we talk really slow. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at sort of this roof. And I'm just going to get to the point where I draw sort of this roof over here, and you guys can do the upper portion of this, okay? But let me draw the roof. So what I'm going to do here, and I think that too, I want to say there may be some little pieces where there's not a measurement, right? Make it look as close as you can. And if you really want to make it perfect, use a ruler and measure things, because you can definitely do that with this project, okay? All right, so I look here and I've got a roof up above here that I need to draw. And I don't really have a floor plan. I guess actually, really, bless you. On the floor plan, when you draw this first level, you will get this dashed line that indicates the roof overhang, right? So you do, on your floor plan, you will have an indication of what's going on with the roof. But if you like me, I haven't drawn that yet, of course, but I do know that from this elevation, from the edge of this column to the edge of the roof here, right, I have a 2-foot overhang, okay? And I know that that overhang starts at 8'4" above the main level floor, right? And it goes up a foot, and then it goes up 5'10". So that's 6'10". So from here all the way down to here is 6'10", okay? And one little thing I'm sort of picking up on is that I have a 2-foot overhang to this outer edge, but this little guy right here kind of, it moves in a little bit as we get towards the eave line. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm probably just going to use the line tool, and I'm going to start right here at the edge of this column, and I'm going to click, I'm going to move out 2 foot, enter. And then I'm going to draw a line straight up, and I'll come back and fix that little offset in a second, but I'm going to draw another line 6 foot 10 inches. Enter. Right? And this then is where the peak of the roof would be, right here. And we don't know what this distance is, but I know that this column lines up with that column. So L for line. And I know that this column is going to come all the way over here, and that's going to go to there, right? And I use my object tracking just to line those up, right? So right there is where it ends, okay? And then you'll have some windows and things to draw right there. And this L for line, this cuts down 3 foot 4, enter, and it extends all the way over here to there, yes, and then it goes back up 3 foot 4 inches, enter, and it's gonna extend all the way across. I'm gonna click and draw a line there and then do 2 foot, enter, and it's gonna come down and meet that. Trim, TR, enter, enter, and I have my basic roof structure. So I can see that I have a 6-inch trim here. It looks like 2 6-inch trims, right? So I'm going to offset, enter, 6 inches, enter. Okay, EX, enter, enter, extend. Bring that all the way across. Okay, and I have another piece that's going to pop up, or have another offset. So O, enter, 6 inches, enter. Click, click. Okay. And I know that this little piece, TR trim, I don't know what that little offset is, but we'll say 1 inch maybe. L for line, shift right click from, click, 1 inch, enter, TR, enter, enter. Got your little offset. Right? We'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to TR, enter, enter. L for line, shift, oh, first point, click, shift right click from, click here over, 1 inch, enter, trim, oop. There we go. Now this whole roof, MA, match properties, right, likely will be on the same layer as that heavy outline. Okay, so looks pretty good. And let's see, that looks good. Any questions so far? You guys are like, we've got a lot of drawing to do. Has anybody started the elevation yet?
Well, I'm trying. You're going real fast.
Deb's trying to follow along in class. Yep. Oh, you have? Good. 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 Sounded like Brian. Did you, or no, Lanny? You said you started it? No. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, really, what I could start doing is, right? I don't have the second level floor plan drawn. But I have a lot of things on the elevation that can indicate or show me where everything else is, right? So I know where this roof line terminates here. I know that I have a column here and here, and that they are going to translate up to here, right? And I know I have a distance here. And I know then I have another offset, 6'8", to the top of the roof, right? So really, you don't necessarily need the second floor plan to draw the rest of this. Might be helpful, of course, right? But you don't really need it. You're just going to use the information that you now have on the elevation here to help you finish drawing this, okay? Now I'm going to save this drawing, and I'm going to, let's pretend I'm done with it, okay? I'm going to right click and I'm going to detach the floor plan. So I attached the floor plan and now I detached it. I don't need it anymore, right? I was just using it for reference. I'm going to close out of this file and save it. And I want to open up my master file, which is the file where I compiled all of my XREFs together. And I'm going to, of course I knew that was going to happen. Let me detach, reattach my exterior elevation. I think me leaving those those construction lines extending like that is causing a little bit of trouble. So I think I'm going to close out of this and open up my elevation again. And I'm gonna trim off those construction lines that are going into infinity. There we go. Control S, there we go. Save that, close it. And then I'm gonna reopen my final project, my master file. Okay. Exterior elevation, open, okay. I'm having a lot of trouble here today. What's going on? Let's chase our little dot. Let me open up my elevation again. It's weird. So what's happening, let me close this and save it. What's happening here is I go to XREF in my elevation file, right? And I hit open and I hit OK. And it's asking me for an insertion point, but I don't see my file anywhere. Does that make sense? I think this should be limited to me. And then when I click to place it, it goes out into nowhere land, right? Let's go up here and look. And so what I think is happening, there's something wrong with my elevation file. There's something wrong with my elevation file. And here is the leading cause. Let me tell you the leading cause of it, usually, is usually when something like this is happening. Let me open up my elevation file. Usually you have a drawing like this, and there are lines into infinity, just like I had and I deleted. Or you have your drawing over here, and there's a tiny little line segment over here in the middle of nowhere that looks like a dot, right? There's some type of geometry out in space that makes it so that when you click zoom extents, it zoom extents into oblivion, right? And we call that floating dot syndrome, where you have some type of geometry out here in the middle of nowhere that is causing your zoom extents to be extremely large, okay? And so what I'm going to do here real quick, hopefully I can fix this, because I don't seem to see a dot anywhere, which is, I'm going to cheat. Okay, let's see if I fixed it. Okay. Oh, there's something weird with that file. So I'm chasing stuff all over the place. All right. Total fail, right? Chasing drawings. Where is the other one? There it is. Don't like you being up there, huh? I don't think this will happen to you guys. I did something, I must have done something. There's something else in the file. And I know that because oh, I thought I moved it down. Okay, folks, I haven't had this much trouble in a long time. Here they are. All right, finally fixed it after chasing it all over Egypt, right? Okay, so there's my file, my elevation there, right? I'm pretty positive this is a specific instance of what just happened because I was having trouble in my original file, right? So I've done something odd. So I don't think you should have that same problem, but essentially now, right, I have my elevation file here. So I've got my floor plan file, it's XREF'd into my final project, right? I have my elevation file here, it's XREF'd into my final project. At this point, I could come into my floor plan, right? I've set up my floor plan tab. I've blocked in my title block here, right? I've created my viewport on the viewport layer, and I could really start setting up my sheets, right? I could scale these. Oh, let's see, 1/4 of an inch maybe. More small. 3/16, okay. And those lines are in my floor plan file, so I'm going to quickly open up my floor plan file, X floor plan, and I'm going to delete these because we don't need them. There we go. Okay. Right click, reload, and those are gone. Okay, so I have my floor plan here ready to go, and I'll go to my exterior elevation, click, click, find my, look, we actually found it that time, right? Click, click out, grab the viewport, and I'm going to scale it. So I went from, there we go, looks pretty good, right? But I want to show you now when I go to print, I'm going to preview this. And so my scale looks a little bit small, right? But what I do see is the outline is really heavy, right? And the detail of the windows is a little more fine. I likely think I picked too heavy of a line for that. So if it were me doing this, I would go back into my original file and I would change the layers, right? I'd look at it and think, yeah, you know, it's kind of thick. That one, there's just something wrong with it. Even though I caught, didn't I just caught? Did I? Something, right? This one's just all sorts of messed up today. I know, right? Fail, 10 points off. So everything is just not quite right with it. Of course, the drawing methods were fine. Everything will work, right? But we gotta fix that real quick. Oh, I bet I know what let's go back here too. I'm gonna do a quick fix here, so pay no attention. No, I have to go into the original file. Yeah. I'm gonna open up my elevation again. There's just something really off with it for whatever reason. Okay. I might have, you know what, I wonder if it's that gray color 9. That one must be a really, oh, and I forgot to change purple. That doesn't help. Okay, maybe that'll help. And then MA, match properties. We'll make these all red. That might help with some of the weirdness. File, open. Let's see. Come back. There we go. Okay, better, right? So now you can see even these are, they're medium pen weights, right? So they read less thick than the heavy lines here. And then we have this finer pen weight back here. And I should have matched the column as well to make it look like it was kind of in the background, right? But essentially that's really what we're looking for, right? We want to make sure that graphically it's working, that the pen weights are right. This one could probably actually even be scaled up a tiny bit. So 3/16, maybe we'll go down to 1/4. That might be why it's sort of all clumpy looking too, right? Because I've got all of these really heavy lines sort of, oh, it's a little too big. Okay. We'll do 1/4. That looks better. And we'll preview that. Okay. And I even think I probably would have changed the red to yellow, right? So, but that's essentially what you're looking for, right? Any questions on that? No? Any other questions?
Are we stopping there with that roof, or are we building the second roof?
No, you'll build the second roof. Yep. Yep.
What about the chimney? There's no, like, is that somewhere in another file, like, where exactly the chimney's placed? Because it's like, on there.
Let's
I
look.
know how tall it is, but I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, mine might end up in the fireplace.
On the inside.
on the inside, the center.
But it's like not quite with these pillars. It's like,
Well, so if you, and I didn't draw it, right? But if you draw the fireplace in the center, you can pull lines even from the center to line up.
okay.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay. Yep. So you'll be able to place it. Yep. Okay. What's that? Oh.
Found myself.
Deb's a little stressed out, I think. All right. So I'll stop there today with this one, and then Wednesday is our final class, and I will go over drawing the interior elevation here. So that'll be the last thing that I go through, and then everything will be due Monday. So it's such a short semester. Summer is really a short semester.